A few months ago, Linda, a 68-year-old retired teacher from Michigan, woke up one morning with a strange tingling in her left hand. It wasn't painful. It wasn't dramatic. In fact, it felt more like she had slept on it wrong. She got up, shook her hand a little, and went on with her day like nothing happened. The next morning, it was gone. But 2 days later, it came back. This time, her left cheek also felt slightly numb. Still, she brushed it off. Probably just my age, she told herself. That was Linda's first warning. And just 2 weeks later, she had a mini-stroke while getting dressed for her morning walk. It came suddenly. Her speech slurred for just a moment. She felt dizzy. But by the time the ambulance arrived, most of her symptoms had already faded. That's what makes strokes so terrifying. They don't always come with drama. They come quietly, like a whisper, like a shadow. They show up in small, almost forgettable ways, until it's too late. If you're over 60, or if you care about someone who is, then what I'm about to tell you might be one of the most important things you ever hear. Because stroke doesn't always look like what you see on TV. Sometimes it starts with a mild headache, a moment of imbalance, a slip of the tongue, or a hand that just feels odd. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the most overlooked early signs of a stroke. Signs so subtle that most people ignore them until it's too late. But if you catch them early, you can prevent disaster. And here's the truth. The most dangerous sign of all is one most doctors don't even mention until it's already happened. We'll talk about that one near the end, so stay with me. If you click away now, you might miss the exact sign your body has been trying to show you, and that's not something you can afford to miss. If this kind of information matters to you or someone you love, take a moment now to subscribe. We publish new videos every week with tips that could help you avoid life-threatening mistakes, stay independent, and live stronger after 60. Now, let's dive in, starting with the first and most ignored early warning sign of a stroke. It usually starts in the fingers. Not a sharp pain, not a cramp, just a strange tingling sensation in your hand, your arm, maybe your cheek, or even your leg. Some people describe it as pins and needles. Others say it feels like the limb has fallen asleep. But here's the key. It's usually only on one side. That's what makes this sign so easy to ignore. You think, maybe I slept on it wrong, or it's just poor circulation. But in many cases, this kind of numbness or tingling is your brain's first cry for help. What's happening behind the scenes is far more serious. A minor clot may be forming. Blood flow to certain parts of your brain might be slightly restricted. When that happens, the signals between your brain and your body don't work the way they should. It's like a loose wire in a lamp. It still turns on, but the flickering is a warning. And here's the scary part. For many people, this small symptom appears days or even weeks before a full-blown stroke. I know someone who felt tingling in his left hand every night for a week. He didn't think much of it. He was 72, still active, walking every day. Then one morning he couldn't hold his toothbrush. His grip failed. Within minutes, his speech slurred and he collapsed. By the time help arrived, the damage had begun. But it didn't have to happen that way. So, if you ever notice one-sided numbness, even if it goes away after a few minutes, don't ignore it. Write it down. Take note of which side it happens on. And most importantly, speak to a doctor. Don't just wait and see. That small feeling might be the first knock on the door. And don't worry, we're just getting started. The next sign we're going to talk about is even more subtle and even more likely to be missed by people over 60. Keep watching, because the deeper we go, the more power you'll have to protect yourself. And remember, if this is hitting close to home, drop a comment below. Let me know if you've ever experienced anything like this. You're not alone, and your story might help someone else recognize a sign before it's too late. Imagine you're reading the newspaper, and suddenly one line of text seems a little blurry. You blink, rub your eyes, and try again. Still fuzzy. Maybe the edge of your vision looks a little foggy, or things appear slightly darker on one side. You tell yourself it's just eye strain. Maybe your glasses are smudged. Maybe it's just dry eyes. So you ignore it. But what if it's not your eyes at all? What if it's your brain? You see, your vision is controlled by your brain just as much as it is by your eyes. When a stroke begins to cut off blood flow to the parts of your brain responsible for processing what you see, your vision may suddenly change. And here's the key detail. It often affects only one eye or just one side of your field of vision. That's why it's often missed. The other eye compensates. You adjust without even realizing it. Some people describe this sign as a curtain dropping over part of their sight. Others say it feels like someone dimmed half the room. This doesn't always last long. Sometimes it's just 30 seconds, maybe 5 minutes. Then it goes away. And because it vanishes, people brush it off. But that moment may have been your body's early alarm system hoeing off and being ignored. I want to be clear. Not every moment of blurry vision means you're having a stroke. But when that change happens suddenly, especially in just one eye, and without a clear reason like an injury or fatigue, it deserves your full attention. I once met a man who lost part of his peripheral vision while watching TV. He said it felt like part of the screen had gone dark. It lasted less than a minute. He thought it was the television. 3 days later, he suffered a major stroke that affected the entire left side of his body. That small moment was his only warning. So if you ever experience sudden changes in your vision, particularly if it's in just one eye, don't wait. Get it checked. Every second counts. Because a stroke doesn't just steal your movement, it can steal your sight, your words, your independence, and we're only on the second symptom. The next one may seem harmless at first, but it's one of the biggest red flags, especially if you or a loved one lives alone. Stay with me, and remember to subscribe if you haven't already. Missing the rest of this video could mean missing the one warning sign your body is desperately trying to send you. You're in the middle of a conversation. Maybe you're telling a story, explaining something simple, or just answering a question like, "What do you want for lunch?" And suddenly, you lose your words. Not your thoughts, just the words. You know what you want to say, but your mouth won't cooperate. Or the word you're looking for feels just out of reach. Maybe the sentence comes out jumbled, or the wrong word slips in. Something simple like, "I need a glass of water," becomes, "I need that thing, cup, blue." Sound familiar? For many older adults, occasional forgetfulness is expected. We all blank out sometimes. But here's the critical difference. When it happens suddenly, without warning, and especially in the middle of normal speech, it could be a neurological red flag. Why? Because your ability to speak clearly is managed by very specific regions in your brain, especially in the left hemisphere. When blood flow is interrupted to these areas, even briefly, you can experience sudden confusion, difficulty speaking, or trouble understanding what others are saying. Some people describe it as their brain feeling foggy. Others say it's like trying to talk through a thick wall of cotton, but many brush it off as just being tired, distracted, or off that day. One woman I spoke to described losing her ability to say her husband's name for almost a full minute. She could picture him. She could see him. But his name, something she'd said every day for over 40 years, vanished. She didn't think much of it at the time, but later that week she suffered a TIA, a transient ischemic attack, often called a mini-stroke. That moment of word loss was her first clue, and she nearly missed it. Now, imagine if she had recognized the warning sign and acted earlier. Imagine what might have been prevented. So, here's my advice. If you ever find yourself suddenly confused, forgetting words you use every day, or if your speech slurs even slightly, don't assume it's just fatigue. Don't wait to see if it passes. These are not just quirks of aging. They are signs your brain may not be getting the blood it needs. Take notes. Track when it happens. And talk to your doctor, because the next time it happens, it might not be just a momentary lapse. It could be the beginning of something irreversible, and we're not done yet. The next symptom is one that most people ignore because it happens so often, especially in the morning. But it might be the stroke symptom that hides in plain sight. If you haven't subscribed already, this is the moment to do it, because in the next few minutes, you'll hear about one of the most common, but most deadly, stroke warning signs that people misinterpret every single day. It usually happens when you least expect it. You're walking through the kitchen, maybe reaching for a glass, maybe stepping out of bed in the morning, and suddenly you wobble, your foot slips, your knees feel unsteady. You catch yourself on the counter or have to grab the wall. It feels like a momentary loss of control, and you might laugh it off. Must have stood up too fast. I'm just a little tired. Or the most common one. I guess I'm just getting old. But if that sudden loss of balance came out of nowhere, if it wasn't due to low blood sugar, dehydration, or a slip on the floor, it might be something much more serious. Your brain is what keeps you balanced. There's a part of it, the cerebellum, that works like your body's internal gyroscope. It helps you stay steady, coordinate your movements, and react when your posture changes. And when blood flow is cut off to that part of the brain even briefly, the first thing you lose is control. It doesn't have to be a full fall. In fact, most people don't fall at all. They just feel off. Like their legs aren't fully listening. Like they have to concentrate just to walk in a straight line. I remember speaking to a man who said his legs forgot how to walk for 5 seconds. That was all. 5 seconds. The next day, he had a stroke while stepping out of his truck. And that's the trap. These symptoms are so short, so subtle, we explain them away. But when your balance disappears without reason, it's not just aging. It's your body whispering a warning. If you've ever felt that sudden instability, especially if it was paired with dizziness, blurred vision, or confusion, write it down. Tell your doctor. Don't wait for it to happen again. Because the next time, you might not be near a counter to catch yourself. And a fall isn't the worst thing that can happen. A stroke that goes untreated is. Now, we've gone through 4 symptoms so far, each one more subtle than the last. But the next one, it's so common that people live with it for years and never know they're one step away from disaster. Before we go into that, take a moment to leave a comment below if you've ever had a sudden loss of balance or unexplained dizziness. Your story could help someone else connect the dots. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I strongly encourage you to do it now. The symptom we're about to cover next is one that even many doctors overlook. Missing this could mean missing your only warning before a major stroke. It starts like a regular headache, but something about it just feels off. Maybe it hits faster. Maybe it feels sharper than usual. Or maybe it's located in a strange part of your head, like behind one eye or in a tight band across your forehead. It's not like the tension headaches you've had before. It's not like a sinus ache or the occasional migraine. It's different. That's what people who survive strokes often say afterward. It just didn't feel like my usual headache. And in many cases, they were right to notice that difference. But they didn't act on it in time. Here's why this matters. Headaches can be a sign of bleeding in the brain. In some types of strokes, particularly hemorrhagic strokes, an artery in the brain leaks or bursts, and the pressure begins to build. That pressure often presents as a sudden, severe headache. But even in non-bleeding strokes, a headache that comes on suddenly and severely, or that feels abnormal, may be the brain's way of signaling that something is wrong. The challenge: many people over 60 experience headaches from things like blood pressure changes, medications, poor sleep, or dehydration. So, when a stroke-related headache shows up, it often gets lost in the noise. I once heard from a woman who described her stroke headache as a storm behind my eye. It didn't hurt like a 10 out of 10, she said. It was more like a slow-building pressure that made her feel disconnected, like her thoughts were in a fog. She waited 5 hours before telling anyone. By the time she got to the ER, the damage was already done. The key here is to listen to your body. If a headache feels unfamiliar, comes on suddenly, and especially if it's accompanied by other symptoms like nausea, blurred vision, or confusion, don't try to sleep it off. Don't just take painkillers and wait. Because when it comes to stroke, time lost is brain lost. And remember, no one knows your body better than you. If your gut is telling you that something's different, something's not right, you must act. Call someone. Get checked. It's always better to be told it was nothing than to wake up and realize it was everything. We've now covered 5 early signs, 5 whispers your brain might use to warn you before a stroke strikes. But in the next section, we'll go even deeper. Because the next symptom, it's often misdiagnosed, dismissed, or completely misunderstood. And yet, for many people, it's the very first sign their brain gives them, and the last one before disaster. Make sure you stick with me, and if you haven't hit subscribe yet, this is your chance, because what we're about to talk about could easily be the reason you, or someone you love, gets a second chance. This one catches people off guard because it doesn't look like a medical emergency. In fact, it looks like the most ordinary thing in the world. You feel tired, but not just tired from a bad night's sleep. Not the kind of tired that goes away with a nap or a cup of coffee. This is different. This is the kind of exhaustion that shows up without warning, right in the middle of your day. You're doing something simple, maybe cooking, folding laundry, reading the paper, and then, suddenly, you just have to sit down. Your body feels heavy. Your arms feel weak. Your legs don't want to move. You feel like your energy has drained out of you all at once. Sound familiar? Most people dismiss this kind of fatigue as part of getting older. "I'm not as young as I used to be," they'll say. And while that may be true, this type of sudden, overwhelming fatigue is often a sign that your brain isn't getting the oxygen it needs. Remember, a stroke doesn't always strike like lightning. Sometimes it creeps in. And one of the earliest signs, especially in women and older adults, is a wave of extreme tiredness that doesn't make sense. Here's the real danger. When this fatigue comes without any pain, without any visible issue, people don't tell anyone. They go lie down. They rest. And they miss their only window of prevention. One man I spoke to described it as feeling like my body was walking through mud. He didn't feel pain. He didn't feel dizzy. He just felt like all his energy was gone. He sat down on the couch and fell asleep. He never knew he was experiencing a transient ischemic attack, a mini-stroke. It was his body's final warning before a major stroke hit just a week later. I'm not saying every nap is a warning sign, but if you suddenly feel so tired in the middle of the day that you can't stay upright, that your muscles feel like lead, and especially if that fatigue comes with confusion, weakness, or numbness, you cannot ignore it. You must listen, because when the body suddenly shuts down like that, it may be trying to save itself, and if you ignore that moment, you might not get another. Now, if this is something you've experienced, drop a comment below. Let others know they're not alone. You never know who might read your words and decide to act sooner because of it. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. Because the final stroke symptom we're about to talk about, it's the one nobody wants to think about. It's the one that can look like nothing at all, until it's everything. You need to hear it, and you need to recognize it before it happens to you or someone you love. You're sitting at the table. Someone's talking to you. Maybe they ask a question, or maybe you're mid-sentence, and suddenly you just pause, you stare, you drift. Your mind goes blank for a few seconds. Then, just as quickly, you come back. Maybe you don't even realize it happened. Or maybe you notice that people are looking at you strangely, asking, "Are you okay?" But you feel fine, so you laugh it off. Just zoned out for a second. But what if that zone out was actually your brain skipping a beat? This symptom is one of the most dangerous because it's so easy to miss, not just by you, but by those around you. It's often mistaken for daydreaming, aging, or simply being distracted. But what's really happening in some cases is that a part of your brain briefly stops working, just for a few seconds. This is especially common in what's known as a TIA, a transient ischemic attack, or mini-stroke. The blood flow to part of your brain is interrupted just long enough to cause a blip. These moments don't usually cause lasting damage, but they're often followed by a full-blown stroke if left untreated. One woman I interviewed said her husband would occasionally freeze in conversation. He'd be talking about the grocery list, then just stop. Silent. Still. His eyes stayed open, but it was like he wasn't there. 10 seconds later, he'd pick up like nothing happened. They thought it was just a senior moment, but it wasn't. 2 weeks later, he had a massive stroke while driving. Those little blips were his brain warning them again and again, and no one heard the message. Let me be clear. Not every lapse in attention is a stroke warning. But if these moments are happening more often, if they come on suddenly, if you can't explain them, you must not ignore them. Because a brief loss of awareness may be the only clue your brain gives you before the damage becomes permanent. And here's the hardest part. You might not remember them. So pay attention to what others say. If your spouse, your child, or a friend says, "You blanked out for a second," don't brush it off. Take it seriously. Your life could depend on it. We've now covered 7 of the most easily overlooked symptoms of stroke. Each one may appear small. Each one may feel like nothing. But together, they form a pattern, a warning your body gives you before the worst happens. In the closing section, I'll walk you through exactly what to do if you've experienced any of these signs, and how to take action before it's too late. And if you haven't subscribed yet, this is your moment, because information only helps when it reaches you in time. Let's take a moment to go back. 7 symptoms. 7 signals that may seem small on their own, but together they tell a story. Tingling or numbness in one side of the body. Sudden changes in vision. Trouble finding words or confusion. A brief loss of balance. A strange headache that doesn't feel like the others. Sudden, unexplained fatigue. And those quiet, almost invisible moments when your mind just drifts away. If you've experienced even one of these, don't panic, but don't ignore it, because strokes rarely strike without warning. The warning signs are there. The body speaks. The question is, will we listen? It's easy to tell ourselves that these things are just part of aging. But aging also doesn't have to mean helplessness. It doesn't have to mean silence. And it certainly doesn't have to mean being blindsided by something that could have been prevented. So here's what I want you to do. First, write down anything you felt that sounds familiar. Even if it was just once. Keep a log. These moments matter. Second, talk to your doctor. Share your concerns. Be specific. You don't need to have all the answers. You just need to ask the right questions. Third, and this is important, share this video. You might feel fine right now, but someone you care about might not. One share could save a life. And finally, if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. Because every week, we break down the warning signs, the misunderstood symptoms, and the small, life-saving choices that can help you stay strong and independent long after 60. And let me leave you with this. You don't need to wait for a diagnosis to start protecting yourself. You don't need to see flashing lights to know it's time to act. Sometimes, it's the smallest sign that speaks the loudest, if you're willing to hear it. Take care of yourself. Take care of those you love. And I'll see you in the next video.